So, the Mortal Kombat 2 film has just been released, meaning we now have 3 different live-action adaptations of Johnny Cage. Lyndon Ashby / Chris Conrad from the 1995 and Annihilation universe, Matt Mullins and Casper Van Dien from the Legacy universe in 2011 and 2013, and, of course, our most recent addition, Karl Urban and Mortal Kombat 2 from 2026, the modern film universe. But which of these Johnny Cages are the most like the games? Let's find out by bringing back a classic oddity series. Hello my fellow oddities and welcome to Adaptation Arena, the series where we ask who is the most accurate, and today we're gonna find out between these 3 fine gentlemen. We will go through 5 categories, and for each category I will rank the 3 adaptations based on accuracy to the games in that area. First place gets 4 points, second gets 2, and third place gets 1. We'll tally up the points at the end of the video, and the adaptation with the most will be our victor. So without further ado,
it's showtime.
Spoilers for MK2, don't watch this video if you haven't seen it! Which of these 3 Johnnies look the most like their game counterparts? We'll be looking at the outfits and physical characteristics that are able to be controlled, such as hair color. Uncontrollable physical characteristics, such as race, facial structure, or age, will be covered under the casting category. First, looking at the source material, Johnny has your typical male Hollywood celebrity look. Clean shaven, short brown hair, blue eyes, and his outfit generally reflects his martial arts background. Shirtless, black compression pants, some absids, and blue highlights with the belt and shin/arm guards. This general look started to get some variation in the 3D era and MK9, including new belts, tattoos, and hell, his sunglasses are constantly switching up. Aviators, sports shields, navigators, wraps, Ray-Bans, you name the sunglasses, Johnny Cage has worn them. Though that's a lot in part due to the gear systems. But his design philosophy would get a revolutionary, groundbreaking change come MKX. Instead of this flashy martial arts attire, Johnny would get normal clothes. Why ain't y'all cheering? This is totally an upgrade to me. And unfortunately, this is the aesthetic that gets adapted in the movies, so let's begin with 1995/Annihilation. In both movies, Johnny wears a regular blue shirt and pants. Before MK1, this would have gotten him exactly, nowhere, but because MK1 gave him a design that was basically this, he gets saved a little bit. There is also the literal MK 1995 outfit in MK11, but come on, that's just cheating at that point. He also occasionally wears aviator sunglasses until they get destroyed by Goro in 1995, but then inexplicably respawn in Annihilation. In terms of physical look, Lyndon Ashby is pretty spot on. Short brown hair, clean shaven face, blue eyes. Chris Conrad has slightly darker hair, but it's fine. Who cares, bro's on screen for like 2 minutes anyway. And he does wear a suit and tie as well that was not only in the canon MK 1992 prequel comic, but went on to be a common alternate skin for the character. So yeah, it could definitely be worse. Now moving on to Legacy. No correlation. Legacy Johnny has an even more basic wardrobe across both seasons. Season 1 has him wearing leather jackets, red shirts, even in his shows he's just wearing normal clothing with no sunglasses. No wonder your stuff is flopping, Johnny, you ain't got no sauce. Season 2 is slightly better, actually wearing the aviator sunglasses, and he has a motorcycle outfit that, if you squint both eyes really hard, kinda resembles some of his MK11 skins. His main attire, though, is a basic black jacket with a graphic tee underneath. Mid. Looks-wise, Season 1 Johnny has black hair, stubble, and brown eyes, which would be inaccurate to the original timeline, but recent games have had Johnny with brown eyes cause you can't spell NRS without inconsistency. Season 2 does give him the blue eyes, but his hair is now grayish and he has a beard. And finally, Mortal Kombat 2 2026 Johnny Cage. His outfit is, again, pretty boring, being a brown leather jacket with a white shirt underneath and some black pants. He does have the Cage belt buckle, which started in MK9, but this version is mostly based on MK11, which is also the game where he gets these Ray-Ban sunglasses from. His hair is a little darker than Game Johnny, but he has these blonde tips which basically create the same effect as brown hair, plus Johnny has been blonde in the past. And he has a little bit of stubble, but not enough to make a difference. But this Johnny does have the distinction of being the only Johnny adaptation to have a design ripped straight from the game, so that being the outfit worn in the Uncaged Fury trailer. This is taken from past Johnny in MK11, and it's a major boost, even if he doesn't wear it for very much of the film. He's also the only Johnny to have green energy with his shadow powers. So, overall, I think we have a pretty clear first, second, and third. Legacy is so incredibly sauceless. They get last place, and so only 1 point. Then, I think 1995 takes second. Johnny's physical appearance is pretty spot on, but the actual outfit leaves a lot to be desired, so they get 2 points. And 2026 MK2 Johnny gets the first place with 4 points, even though it's still not the classic Johnny we all want to see. He's the only one to have a fully recreated costume, plus the green energy effects, and a serviceable physical look. So, the most recent adaptation takes the early lead. Which of these three Johnnies fight the most like their game counterpart? We'll be looking at the powers and abilities, recreated moves, and whether or not they seem to be as strong as the character in the games. Game Johnny is known for his flashy, acrobatic fighting style, consisting of lots of kicks, flips, and fast hands. He also has the green energy / shadow abilities that strengthen his attacks, defy physics, and gift him literal plot armor. People think it started with Cole, but no, Johnny is the OG. And he has lots of attacks, especially in recent games, that are quite goofy and fun, like throwing his sunglasses, blinding the opponent with a camera, and of course, the world famous nut punch. Oh, I don't care, I'm keeping that in the video. Johnny's power scaling is one of the most inconsistent of the franchise, but generally he's mid to high tier who will easily deal with jobbers, occasionally beat someone higher like Scorpion, but most definitely lose to the top of the top unless he activates his plot armor, of course. 1995 Johnny has a fairly basic but acceptable martial arts style of good old punching and kicking. He does show some unique agility in the Scorpion fight, doing a cool flip onto this platform. But for the most part, he's not looking to be flashy, he's looking to get the job done, which, respectable. His power scaling seems pretty accurate as well, beating Scorpion, but getting destroyed by Shao Kahn. He does beat Goro, which seems a little far-fetched, but that was more of an outsmarting rather than hand-to-hand masterclass. And across both films, he does his shadow kick twice, once in each, but it's a jumping version of it instead of the grounded one he does in the games. And of course, you can't forget the nut punch, and out of these three adaptations, his seems to hurt the most. Legacy Johnny has a pretty accurate fighting style, being fast, acrobatic, flipping a lot, and utilizing a lot of kicks. Unfortunately, he uses none of this in actual fights against competent opponents. Instead, it's either in his TV shows, which are fake, or against absolute jabronis like these untrained TV producers. Oh my god! In Season 2, when he goes against real fighters like Melina and Liu Kang, he gets offended. Which, yeah, is probably the most realistic outcome of a human amongst godlike ninjas and monsters. But realism in Mortal Kombat fit like a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't. He does do the nut punch, but again, it's in one of his TV show pitches, and so I really take no value out of that. And he has no shadow abilities whatsoever. Get out! Let's move on to Mortal Kombat 2. Mortal Kombat 2 Johnny is a weird one to break down for this category, cause like Legacy Johnny, he really isn't competent when just fighting regularly. Case in point, his fight with Kitana, who he'd probably lose to anyway, but still. But when he embraces his persona and fills the role of Johnny Cage, he has a very goofy and movie-fied fighting style, which is actually fairly accurate. Lots of flips, kicks, exaggerated movements, and through this he's able to beat Baraka, of course with the nut punch, and convince him he's the greatest fighter ever. But the most important thing is the shadow abilities, with Johnny doing the grounded, physics-defying shadow kick that destroys Shinnok's amulet. And so, while doing the verdict, once again, MK2 Johnny is the only one outside of the nut punch, which all three do, to have a move pulled directly from the games. Yes, 1995 does a shadow kick, but it's a leaping one that he doesn't do in the games. And Legacy just does nothing because it's ass. So again, MK2 in first place, 1995 in second, Legacy in third. Which of these three Johnnies are played by an actor most like their game counterpart? Here, we'll be looking at race, age, and most importantly for MK, martial arts background of each actor to see which has the most Johnny Cage inside of them.
Hey, pause, no Diddy!
And for Johnny specifically, I'll also be looking at star power because he is a famous celebrity in the games. This actor should at least be most well known of their respective cast. Johnny in the games is a handsome white man. Oh shit, that's an oxymoron, sorry. From the good old US of A, specifically Venice, California. He's generally depicted in his late 20s, early 30s, though has gone up to as high as his mid 50s in more recent games. And of course, he has that extensive martial arts background, winning several karate tournaments, but he has mastered several other martial arts as well, allowing him to do his own stunts in films. Lyndon Ashby had some martial arts experience prior to the movie, allowing him to do a lot of his own stunts, which Johnny would certainly approve of. He has a black belt in Tang Soo Do. Yeah, me neither. But clearly, it was effective enough as he looks to be a perfectly capable fighter. Ashby is also a white American from California, and he was 35 when the film came out, though does not look it at all. What the hell? Though one thing that drags him back a bit is that he's not exactly a big name, even after the film released and was a huge success. Originally, the role was meant for Jean-Claude Van Damme, the inspiration for Johnny, but he turned it down to be in Street Fighter. Wonder how that turned out for him. So they got Lyndon Ashby for his martial arts background instead. Not a huge deal, but a bigger star would be preferable. No disrespect meant. Chris Conrad is also a white American from Florida who trained in kickboxing, judo, and jiu-jitsu. Nice. Again in the movie for like 2 minutes. Legacy Johnny is played by Matt Mullins and Casper Van Dien. Starting with Matt Mullins, this dude is who Andrew Tate thinks he is. 7th degree black belt in Shorai Ryu. I didn't even know you could be a 7th degree black belt in anything. 5-time kickboxing world champion, founder of an MMA gym, and also an expert in gymnastics and acrobatics. The dude's about as close to Johnny Cage in the martial arts realm as you're gonna get. He was also exactly 30 at the time of Legacy Season 1, 1 year older than what Johnny was said to be in the original game, and he's a white American actor, so pretty spot on other than not being the biggest name. He's mostly known for being Chris's face model in Resident Evil. Season 2 would see him recast for some godforsaken reason with Casper Van Dien, a 44-year-old white American actor with some Muay Thai and MMA experience. Sounds a bit dry, but to be honest, anyone would going after the last guy. Other than that, he was in Starship Troopers, which is an improvement. And finally, we have Karl Urban. Firstly, let's get this out of the way. This guy is basically Michael Jackson compared to the other schmucks. Biggest star by far, appearing in The Boys, the MCU, Lord of the Rings, Star Trek, Judge Dredd, you name it. But as a sacrifice, he basically shares no other similarities with Johnny Cage, other than being white, which is not that hard to find in Hollywood. He's from New Zealand, not the US, has no martial arts training prior to the film, which, hey, for 53 years old, it's impressive to learn all that for the role. And speaking of which, yeah, 53 years old, which Johnny has been depicted as in the games. However, relative to the rest of the characters, he's never that much older. So, for the verdicts, I've been pretty harsh on Legacy, but I have to admit, here they cooked with Matt Mullins as Johnny. Alright, Casper Van Dien, he's fine, you know, he's there as well. But Matt Mullins. Legacy gets first place, then I have 1995/Annihilation, and finally, Karl Urban's the biggest star, but I value the other things more, so MK2 gets last place. which of these three Johnnies act the most like their game counterparts? We'll be looking at allegiance, personality, and relationships here. Johnny in the games is initially a self-centered, wisecracking douche who you still just can't help but love. His style of humor is very quippy, and he's often the butt of the joke, mostly from his cluelessness or ridiculous ego. But after the first tournament, and also generally as the series goes on, he becomes more and more caring towards others as he builds his relationship with the other Earthrealm fighters. In the latest two timelines, he's also had a major relationship that shifts his view on life. MK9/X/11 had Sonya, with him having Cassie maturing him as well, and in the MK1 timeline, it's Kenshi. But even through all this growth, he never loses his role as the audience surrogate, saying what we're all thinking and being a palate cleanser from the death, destruction, and rivalry. 1995 Johnny is one of the good guys, so a start. You'd think that's not something that should be applauded, but not with this series. And he certainly has his moments with the comedy, but he's not exactly the wisecracking, joke spewer Johnny, being a little bit more calm and almost spiteful of what's around him. From his first scene, he gives off an energy of just being tired of everything, and once he gets on the boat, you can immediately feel that regret that carries with him until he begins taking charge in the tournament. He's never really the butt of the joke, and you're mostly laughing with him. It's not the super quippy, pop culture heavy humor the character is known for, but more so sarcastic and dry, which was popular at the time.
Yeah, I pay money, you carry the bags.
I got it.
Thank God I didn't ask him to park the car.
He does fill that audience surrogate role quite well though, always pointing out the ridiculousness of the predicaments they get into. He also does start out very self-centered, just looking to get into this to restore his career, but as he learns what's at stake and becomes closer with his friends, particularly Sonya, he makes the firm stance to fight for Earth, resulting in him beating Goro. Legacy Johnny Cage is an absolute menace to society. After his career goes down the drain with several failed projects, he becomes an alcoholic and goes around assaulting TV producers and eventually random people on the street. Not even joking, like they literally say he just picks out a random person and beats him up. All the lovable, wisecracking nature of the character is gone in favor of just the asshole parts of him, which are tuned up to 11 as well. Hell, Shang Tsung tries to recruit him to the Outworld side. That's how much of a dickhead this Johnny is, though thankfully he turns it down. He's not that bad. He's still an audience surrogate, but like we discussed earlier, he almost fills that role a bit too well because he does about as well in the tournament as you or I would. He also has practically no meaningful relationships with other characters and doesn't learn a diddly squat throughout 2 seasons about how to be a good person. He's also not really humorous at all unless you find him getting beat up all the time amusing, but no real jokes. Sometimes he says stuff that's meant to be funny. Keyword is meant.
It's for my sunglasses, bitch!
It's for my sunglasses, bitch! It's for my sunglasses, bitch!
It's for my sunglasses, bitch!
MK2 Johnny by far has the most humor to his character. He's still not exactly wisecracking, but he makes a lot more MCU-esque quips than the other two. To be fair, that's a little bit more of a sign of the times we're in when it comes to blockbuster comedy.
Listen, I'm warning you. I got a Saturn Award for Best Fight in a feature film, so don't mess with me.
And he does strike that balance pretty well of him making the funny jokes where you laugh with him and also laughing at him at several points. This version of Johnny isn't very self-centered though, kind of the opposite. He has no confidence in himself or his abilities. This is a version of Johnny whose accusations of being a fake fighter really got to him. He does have a few somewhat meaningful relationships with Sonya, Raiden, Kano, though this Johnny's arc is less about other people and more about embracing who he is. This is definitely the closest so far. Well, not including Legacy. That dude? Lock him up, bruh. But 1995 has that basic arc of him going from self-centered to caring and abandoning his ego for the greater good. However, he doesn't feature that signature humor and comedy of the character that makes him such a bright spot in a lot of the games. 2026 Johnny does have that, though his arc is completely different from the games, having to learn to trust himself and his abilities. So trust me, it's really hard, but I'm gonna give first place to 2026 Johnny and second to 1995. Remember, we're talking about personality here, not exactly shifts in story or character arcs, and when I hear MK2 Johnny speak and interact with others, especially when he's embracing that Johnny persona near the end of the movie, I get more Johnny vibes. 1995, while he has the same basic personality shift and character arc, it feels like he's less of a spoof or parody of big Hollywood action stars, and more like the movie is actually trying to treat him like a real badass one, which doesn't get the exact tone of Johnny Cage right. He's an exaggeration at heart. Which of these Johnny's stories are the most like their game counterpart? We'll be looking for similar or same plot lines and story beats as the ones in the game surrounding Johnny's character, whether it be backstory or current events. Since all these adaptations adapt the earlier games, those are the ones we'll look at for Johnny's story. John Carlton, aka Johnny Cage, grew up practically living martial arts. He won several karate and kickboxing tournaments and traveled the world learning several combat styles and perfecting his athletic ability, becoming as acrobatic, powerful, and quick as a human possibly could. Using these skills, he breaks into Hollywood, making cheesy B-movie action flicks that gain a large cult following, and he becomes a household name, a la Chuck Norris, but hopefully without the Trump supporting. Rip Bozo. However, as the first Mortal Kombat tournament approaches, he begins getting accusations of being a fake fighter, which begins to hurt his career. To save it, he joins Mortal Kombat, initially just wanting to further his star status, but after learning what's at stake and befriending his fellow warriors, he becomes a true hero for Earthrealm, participating, however not winning, the two tournaments in MK 1992 and MK2. In MK3, Johnny joins the Defenders of Earth against the invading Outworld. However, he is killed, but quickly brought back like nothing ever happened. 1995 Johnny is a major film star and martial artist, whose recent projects are on a downward trend due to the accusations of fake stunts. Shang Tsung manages to coerce Johnny into joining the tournament by disguising as his master, Boyd, and promising that this tournament will prove he's the best fighter in the world. So he joins for personal glory. However, he realizes that Earth and everything he loves is on the line, so when no one else will, he steps up to face Goro and is victorious. He helps Liu Kang to win the Mortal Kombat tournament, and that's when Shao Kahn begins his invasion, and just like in MK3, which Annihilation was adapting, Johnny is killed. However, he does not get brought back. He was meant to in a third MK film that never happened because Annihilation was poop. So yeah, pretty damn accurate, other than him defeating Goro, which is a major change as Goro is the reigning champion, so Johnny beating him like that is kinda wild. Legacy Johnny has a very similar backstory to the games, being a major martial artist and film star, winning several karate tournaments. Of course they use real footage of Matt Mullins actually winning his tournaments, cause the dude is just better than you, okay? I'm also pretty sure this is the only Johnny adaptation to be specifically referred to as John Carlton.
But before becoming a worldwide sensation, John Carlton was just a small boy with big dreams.
And his career does begin declining, though much more steeply than it does in the games, with nobody caring about his movies and stunt work, and Johnny falling into alcoholism and prison time. When his TV pitches are rejected, but then subsequently used to pitch to a different actor, he goes ballistic and beats up the TV producers responsible, which is when he is confronted by Shang Tsung and asked to join Outworld. Johnny refuses, and instead he just gets into more trouble beating up random people, and while in jail, he is confronted by Raiden, who gets him to agree to fight for Earth in the tournament. While in the tournament, Johnny gets beat up by Melina and beat up by Liu Kang. That's about it, really. MK2 Johnny was a martial artist who won karate tournaments and became a major film star in the 90s. However, rather than accusations of fake stunts, his downfall would come because of time. If you don't get this abomination off my screen right now. Basically, people just got tired and moved on from the corny B-movie style, especially as Johnny got older. So in the present day, Johnny is depressed and scraping to get by off of Comic-Con appearances. But after Kung Lao is killed in the prior film, the Earthrealmers need a new champion, and the Elder Gods choose Johnny Cage. Raiden and the crew try to recruit him, but after learning about the death possibility, Johnny decides it's not for him, but he's forced into it anyway, fighting and losing losing horribly against Kitana. This makes Johnny even more depressed as he had a chance to be something but was woefully unprepared. He sorta just tags along for the ride until the heroes need to get help from Baraka, but he's uncooperative until Johnny starts to run his mouth and the Tarkatan challenges him to a fight. Johnny finally embraces his Johnny Cage persona, which allow him to take the win and impress Baraka enough to get him to help. Johnny then has to go into the Netherrealm to take Shinnok's amulet after it was taken there by Noob Saibot, and he once again embraces his role as Johnny Cage, unlocking his shadow powers to destroy the amulet and ultimately assisting in saving the day. The first place here is very clear. 1995 knocks this one out of the park, being damn near 1-to-1 in terms of accuracy, really only slipping with that weird Goro win. Second and third place is much harder. Neither Legacy or MK2 Johnny have a very accurate story at all. The backstory of both is mostly fine, with each having their own quirks, such as Legacy being a horrible human being and MK2 Johnny being much older from the 90s. And looking at the tournament plot, MK2 Johnny definitely has more to do, but that almost hurts him in this category because what he does is so wildly different from anything from those early games. Him doing nearly nothing in Legacy is honestly more accurate. So, first is 1995, second is Legacy, and third is MK2. Here is the final score total. As you can see, Legacy is the obvious big loser for having a boring, sauceless, pathetic Johnny Cage who only gets by because Matt Mullins was chiseled from the same stone as the Warrior Shrine. But then it's much closer between 1995 and MK2, really coming down to that personality section, which I totally understand giving 1995 the edge on. However, I think 2026 Johnny nails the tone of the character just slightly more, and the aesthetics in the costume and powers is much better, while lacking in the casting and story department. If you personally look for more well-roundedness in your adaptations, then 1995 Johnny is definitely the pick for you, as it doesn't have a single third place in any section. However, it only excels in one, that being the story. But that will do it. Do you agree or disagree with my conclusion? Let me know in the comments down below. Subscribe and leave a like if you want, and that's wraps on this one, my fellow oddities. I'll see you next time.